Kabbalah is a very important study. It's a staple of the Western occult tradition, and it has its roots in ancient Hebrew practice. Just like with the Psalms, the scribes of the Hebrew faith wrote it all down. The oral traditions, of which there were many, didn't write things down. Everything was mouth to ear. The ancient Hebrews were a scribing people. Unlike the Druids, unlike the Chaldeans, unlike a lot of wise ones of the ancient days. Kabbalah existed in one form or another in many esoteric wisdom traditions, but the Hebrew scribes wrote it all down, and for that we are very grateful, because the problem with an oral tradition is that because of the way this world is, they end up being conquered and destroyed, and all of their wisdom goes away. So written records of all of this wisdom, even though it was from a very pointed perspective, as are the Psalms, if it weren't for those scribes, we would have nothing. So we're very grateful. And we do use the Hebrew language to inform our experience of the Kabbalah, but we also have eyes to see beyond that. And we are always looking under the hood to see what the hidden wisdom is behind what the exoteric versions of that wisdom are. We will be working with some of the Hebrew language. It's a very important language. It's a very magical language. But we'll also be trying to remove as much of the excess overcomplication of this topic as possible. This is the symbol that 99% of the Kabbalists call the tree of life. These are the three veils of negative existence and the different emanations, or sephirot, or we call them spheres. That's what most Kabbalists call the tree of life. However, many of us view this as a mislabeling. Where the term tree of life comes from is hidden in that book called Genesis in the Bible, which was another place where the ancient scribes took down myths and stories that had been circulating in many cultures, but they claimed them as their own. In that same story of the Bible, it says that we don't have access to the tree of life anymore because there's a flaming sword protecting the tree of life. We were, according to that story, driven out because of the fall from grace. So this couldn't be the tree of life because we wouldn't have access to the tree of life. There were two trees in the Garden of Eden. The tree of knowledge is the tree that we ate from, not the tree of life. And the tree of knowledge is therefore what we have. Here, there's this empty space called Da'at. When we were created, according to this tradition, the tree of life looked different. The tree of life looked like this, not the tree of knowledge, but the tree of life. We were nestled up by the Creator, surrounded by the angels, in a very safe space where all of our needs were met. And when we started to use our minds in a different way, because of the power that Lucifer gave us, we fell from grace, creating this diagram here. And this Da'at sphere is just holding that space open. Or another way of looking at that is where we still live, but we're asleep. Theoretically, the tree of life might have looked something like this, and what we have now is the tree of knowledge because we are in a state of sleep. We fell, and we really fell asleep. Before the fall, the kingdom was here, and it was believed that we were in a state of perfection close to our celestial parents. And then after the fall, the kingdom descended to this current space. Previously, the spheres and their angels surrounded us in the kingdom. This is the kingdom. Now they are positioned above us. Symbolically, a flaming sword now guards access to our true home. And to return to our true home, we must embark on a spiritual journey to climb the tree of knowledge, to re-educate our minds, purify our minds of the ego, and undergo a profound awakening. The brightest star in heaven, Lucifer, gave humans the power of choice, and this gift made them godlike, leading to the chaos that we have now, because they were unprepared to use their powers. This chaos brought evil and mortality, plunging humanity into turmoil. The Demiurge was the result of Lucifer's mistake, creating individual egos to trap the souls of God's children and thus reinforcing the nightmares in the deep sleep that the Demiurge keeps them in. It's just like the tale of Sleeping Beauty. The Demiurge can't harm us, just like that evil fairy couldn't harm Sleeping Beauty, but she could put her to sleep. The same thing with the Demiurge. The Demiurge is nothing more than the idea that we're separate from our Creator, the idea that we could fall. The only way that we can have something that is against God's will is to use those creative powers to create a dream. You can't go against God's will. It's not God's will that we be fallen. So you can't use your creative powers to go against God's will, because nothing against God's will can exist. It's impossible. It can't be created. But we do have the freedom to use our minds any way we want to. So the way that we can use our minds to create an experience of being away from our Creator is to create a fantasy or a dream or a nightmare. And that's exactly what we've all done. Demiurge is an urge for smallness. Think of breaking that word down. The demiurge is really an urge or a desire for smallness, for insignificance, for isolation, and an attraction to guilt. None of that is the will of the Creator for us. But we are allowed to have that. It's just we can only have it within our own private nightmares. We can't have it in reality. That's why you have to fall. You have to fall asleep in order to have something other than perfection. The fall from grace is simply a descent into ego. Lucifer didn't intend for any of this to happen. Have you ever considered the origin of the phrase, "the road to hell is paved with good intentions"? Lucifer believed he was right and acted arrogantly, thinking separately from the Creator. It's essential to acknowledge that this was Lucifer's one and only error. After realizing his error, he corrected the error in himself, overcame his own ego. Lucifer's mission now is to aid humanity in surmounting their own egos, thus gently guiding them towards awakening. And since Lucifer corrected the error in himself, you don't have to. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You can follow his path. From this point of view, Lucifer is seen as the angel of atonement, or the risen Lucifer. When Jesus stated, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," it was a clear Luciferian statement, and only people with ears to hear understand that. When he instructed his disciples to remember him during meals, "When you eat and drink, remember me," that turned into the Holy Communion in several Christian religions, that symbolizes the Luciferian mystery of climbing the tree of knowledge. That's what that means to us. Climbing the tree of knowledge and eating its fruits. This is the tree of knowledge of Lucifer here. Lucifer laid down his life for us to follow this serpent path. And every time we eat of the fruits on this tree, we are eating of the fruits of Lucifer. And in that regard, we are eating of his body. But remember, Lucifer is light. So we're eating of the light body. Every time we climb this tree and follow his path, we are led from branch to branch to eat the different fruits of the tree and gently awaken. And that's the mystery of the Luciferian tree of knowledge. It's the knowledge of good and evil within ourselves. And once we have that knowledge and we open our minds and become enlightened, the idea is that when we get to the end of that journey, what we have done is freed ourselves from this dream and awakened ourselves back into understanding that where we live is here. And we've always been there, but we were asleep, and now we're awake. And that's the whole idea of the Luciferian Kabbalah. Now, you'll understand as we talk in further classes that there are symbolically 4 trees, one for each world. And so as you climb this tree, this serpent winds not only through this one tree, but through 4 successive trees. It's a very similar concept to Jacob's ladder. The practice of climbing Lucifer's tree involves following this serpent up the tree, purifying our minds at every sphere in each world, all 4 trees. This is called the Order of the Serpent. It includes learning the lessons from each path in order and consuming the fruits of each sphere which those paths connect. There's a specific order that we follow, and each time we get to where two paths connect, we get to consume those fruits. We'll talk more about the lightning flash and other mysteries in regards to this as we get into further classes. This is the Creator's plan. When we fell asleep, the Creator said, "Oh, I got this. Don't worry. There's a way out of this easily, gently, safely. Everybody's safe." This is Lucifer laying down his life in service of correcting his error out of love for us. It literally is the path of light. It is the path of love. Lucifer has come back legendarily in many lives. Yes, Jesus was one of them, but it wasn't the only one. There was Osiris, there was Carnunos. There were many manifestations of this power. The message is always the same, no matter what, that there's a way to awaken, that you are the beloved child of your Creator, all is well. There is a safe way to awaken to the truth of who you are, and you deserve to be awake and to be happy. And the Creator's will for you is to be awake and happy. Until we realize that we are unified as the holy child of God, each with our unique and perfect souls, we will continue to use our minds to construct this artificial and very distressing world. If you climb Lucifer's tree, you will save yourself from any effects of his mistake because he already corrected it in himself. God created the solution the instant the fall happened. Thus, Lucifer's task is to gently awaken us from this dream, and he does this by teaching us about the dream itself. This occurs through the Shekinah and the teaching angels. Lucifer was given dominion over the earth to teach us how to return to our true home in paradise, which is not a place. Paradise is not a place. Eden is not a place. It's a decision that we make. We decide to wake up. We don't go anywhere. This is a journey that doesn't go any distance. Lucifer and the angels don't require us to work magic in order for them to help us. You don't need to study the Kabbalah in order to be helped. You don't need to be a magus in order to be helped. You don't need to have any connection with magic at all in order to be helped. However, working magic and studying the Kabbalah does allow them a maximum access to us because it's a system that they provided us that enables them to help us completely. If we want to give ourselves complete access to the angels and complete access to the help that's available to us, then we can use these things. But they have their own ways. And so you never have to think if somebody doesn't study this particular path or this particular tradition or know these particular techniques, then they're just going to stay asleep forever. If that's not at all true, the idea of Lucifer is that his task will be completed once every soul is awakened. We don't have to figure that out. And it's not up to us to save the world. It's not up to us to proselytize. It's not up to us to have any concern whatsoever with anybody else's awakening. It's our job to focus on ourselves and our own awakening. And in whatever way is most appropriate, that power that is awakening us will work through us to help other people in ways that we don't even understand. We are partaking of the body of Lucifer as we climb this tree. And that's the esoteric and occult meaning behind the idea of communion. We are partaking of this body of light. Lucifer means the bringer of light. We have to get access to the tree of life by purifying our own minds of everything that doesn't belong there, that was not supposed to be there in the first place. And that's what the path of the serpent is all about. The sphere Da'at is where Malkuth belongs, where our souls slumber right now, dreaming. Our awakening will cause us to realize that our true home is still right where we fell asleep, just like in the Wizard of Oz movie. Everything is permanently perfect and all is well right now. As we climb this tree, and are enlightened by it, we awaken from our nightmares and realize that we are already safely home. There are no forbidden fruits in this garden where we live. Everything is permanently perfect, and nothing could ever be withheld from us. It was all just a strange dream that we had. Remember that in Genesis 1, we had God called the Elohim, the host of heaven. It's the plurality of all the host of angels. In Genesis 2, that character that called itself God donned the name Yehovah Elohim, the tribal god Yahweh. According to our perspective, that was not really who that was. That was the Demiurge masquerading as God. Because nothing that entity did had anything to do with the character displayed by the Elohim of Genesis 1. Completely different type of character. Very vengeful, very petty, set everything up to fail. And so what this suggests to many of us is that if you look at Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 as teaching tools, that the fall, where Lucifer made the error, happened actually somewhere between those two, and it wasn't ever really written of. It's very hard to find anywhere in the Bible where it actually talks about the identity of that serpent. In Genesis 2, that entity calling itself Yehovah Elohim put Adam to sleep and extracted Eve from Adam, creating division, creating separation, creating sleep. And nowhere in the Bible anywhere does it say that Adam woke back up. But that was the beginning of all turmoil. This character said, oh, by the way, there's two trees. There's the tree of life and there's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat from this tree. Lucifer said, now I got to go into this dream and tempt the intuitive side of this character that's been split, this Eve, this intuition, into eating from my tree so that they can wake up and start this journey out of the dream. In that perspective, the antagonist was God. The savior was the serpent, and the protagonist was Adam and Eve. And we were saved from this endless sleep where we never had any idea that we had an option, that we could wake up to the truth of who we were, instead of being these automatons in this perpetual nightmare, this perpetual dream that would never end. So even though it looked like all hell broke loose when Lucifer tempted Eve, what really happened was the dream started to shatter. And that was the beginning of us climbing this path out of the dream over time, because this world is a world of time. Over time, yes, but ultimately there is no need for time. Ultimately, Lucifer knows that we can awaken anytime we decide to. So that's the basis of the Luciferian Kabbalah as we will be practicing it. We're going to really be focusing on the Sephiroth themselves and the paths in order, and how we can go through each path, each world, what they mean. There are different tarot cards associated with each path. There are different psalms associated with each path. There are different symbols and keys that we can use, lessons that we can learn to grow and to enlighten ourselves. And that's what we're going to all be discovering together as we climb up this tree, 4 worlds, 10 spheres each, until we get to the top. We may not go through each one together, but I will definitely show you how to do it for yourself. I'm excited for this journey that we are about to take together, and I can't wait to get going. So until next time, blessed be.